Hey everybody, welcome to Touchdown BC. I'm Ryan Sullivan. Coming up on today's show, we got a busy one. SFU was in tough against a Div 1 school down south. UBC got some much needed rest. We'll get you your fix of AAA and AA BC high school football, a BCFC playoff preview, and a look at your 2014 BCFC All-Stars, along with a little more education at the hands of Jay Prepchuk. And we're also going to take you out to check out the 2014 induction class of the BC Football Hall of Fame. First, though, let's start with a little Simon Fraser football. And after picking up their first win of the season over Dixie State last week, Simon Fraser headed to Pocatello, Idaho for dance with Division I Idaho State Bengals. Yeah, out to Idaho we go, a Division I opponent for the struggling Simon Fraser clan. SFU looked to get off to a great start, though, as Earl Anderson returned the opening kickoff 60 yards. However, a holding call would bring it right back. The Bengals would go right to work, though, as Xavier Finney would run 20 yards right up the can. This put ISU up 7-blank early. Then, Justin Arias would throw it to K.W. Williams, who makes his man miss, taking this one 72 yards all the way home for the major, and a 14-0 lead for Idaho State. Arias would not be done as he throws another one of his 5 touchdown passes on the day, this time 50 yards, as Idaho State led 21-blank after just one quarter. This one got ugly early, now trailing 52-0, and in the fourth quarter, Ryan Stanford would enter at quarterback, and he would connect with Justin Buren. This one's a 25-yard score to put SFU on the board. 2 drives later, they would hook up again as Buren rumbles 41 yards deep into ISU territory. Stanford would finish it off with a keeper of his own to make the score 59-14. However, the Bengals would put an exclamation point on this game as Ja'Cory Ford gets to the edge and runs 69 yards all the way back, making the final score 66-14 for ISU. Not a lot of bright spots in this one, though. Ryan Stanford, checking into the game late, still went 16 for 22, 190 yards, 2 majors, 1 pick on the day. However, SFU finally comes home after a long road trip this weekend. They take on the South Dakota School of Mines Hard Rockers. And now let's take a look at your GNAC standings. All right, as always, we welcome in our SFU insider, Mac Dalglish, joining us from beautiful Burnaby, British Columbia. Mac, how are you today, my friend?
I'm doing well, Ryan. How are you?
Doing very well. Thanks again for joining us here. Big loss, but they were playing a pretty big opponent.
Yeah, it was kind of an unfortunate series of events. You come off playing against Dixie State, getting your first win of the season, always a big deal. Then you turn around and having to play a Division I school in Idaho State, and there's a reason why they're Division I, and a reason why SFU's Division II. And unfortunately, it played out how it was expected to play out. You didn't even have to really see how the game was going to go if you just saw how they lined up against one another, the size difference, the athleticism difference. SFU tried to run to the edges and couldn't get to the edge. Idaho State would be right there to kind of stop them in their tracks and put them for a loss. And it was just really difficult to watch. However, they didn't give up. SFU didn't give up. The players played all the way through. They were able to score 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter, so they didn't pack it in and head back home to Burnaby on the top of the mountain. So at least they didn't give up, but it was a David versus Goliath type deal, and unfortunately, Goliath came through.
Now, this is a going trend with us on this show here, Mac. We always like to look for a positive, some sort of grain of salt digging through the unfortunate muck that we just saw this past weekend. But what can you tell us? What stood out to you as a positive in this game?
Well, your best players need to be your best players, and Lamar Durand is the player who, before he came to SFU, went down to the University of Nevada, Division I school, FBS level, which is a step above Idaho State, and he continually got open. He got behind his man. He was able to catch the ball when thrown to. Unfortunately, not all the balls thrown his way were catchable, but he led the team with 9 receptions for 94 yards. He needed to be their best player, and it showed. As well, Justin Buren, a wide receiver who's kind of buried on the depth chart, came through with 5 receptions for 92 yards and a touchdown. He had a nice 41-yard catch over the middle that set up the second touchdown for SFU. And then at quarterback, Ryan Stanford, he came in to replace Tyler Nickel, who was kind of ineffective for much of the game. He came in, went 16 for 22 22 for 190 yards with 2 touchdowns, 1 rushing. He did throw an interception, but it begs the question, is there going to be another quarterback competition going on here? Nickel, as I said, didn't look too good. Stanford came in, orchestrated 2 touchdown drives, and it's going to be interesting moving forward how the quarterback position plays out this week.
That was me panning through muck, by the way. That's what that was for people wondering. But Mac, preview this week for us. Obviously, SFU needs a bounce back here.
They do. Fortunately for them, they've been on the road for 4 straight weeks. This week, they get to go back to Swangard Stadium for the first time since week 2. That's always nice to be able to play in front of your home fans. It should give them a jolt of energy of being able to sleep in their own bed for the weekend, being able to go to their own park, their own confines, playing in front of friends and family. And they're getting a team that hasn't won a game in the conference yet. The South Dakota School of Mine Hard Rockers, brand new this year to the conference in the GNAC. They're 0-2 in conference play, and I believe 1-5 overall, same record as SFU. So it kind of gives them a nice game to get back into the swing of things. Have to remember this Idaho State game was non-conference. It doesn't count to the conference schedule in the GNAC. So if they can put that one out behind them and move on to South Dakota School of Mine, it should set up for a nice kind of get back on track game. And there's still lots to play for this season in the conference schedule with their record only being 1-1. Get here, they get to be above 500 at 2-1 and kind of set things up for the second half of the season. All
right, his name's Mac Dalgleish, and as always, he's our SFU insider. Coming off a slim loss in a very highly controversial ball game against Saskatchewan 2 weeks ago, UBC and the Canada West took a much-needed week off. Myself and my colleague Andrew Wadden are now going to break down UBC's mid-season troubles and what can be done to right the ship. I'm also now going to use the magic of television to show you the current Canada West standings so that I can go stand over there for when we come back to me in 5 to 8 seconds. Quickly taking a peek at your Canada West standings, nothing has changed. Everybody had the week off for Thanksgiving. Calgary still in first, followed by Saskatchewan, Alberta, Manitoba, UBC, and the Regina Rams. See, the magic of television. We welcome in our UBC insider, as we do every week, and also my co-host on Crown Countdown U. You should be watching that as well. Andrew Wadden, welcome to the set. Now, let's talk about the 1-4 UBC T-Birds. They got a much-needed week off.
Turkey break.
Let's touch on the good, as we like to start with.
All right, so turkey break for the UBC Thunderbirds this week. The good, and this sounds like a broken record a little bit, but Marcus Davis is the good right now with the UBC Thunderbirds. He leads the nation with just over 30 yards return per kick return. He's averaging 184.6 all-purpose yards per game. He's going to be a Peter Gorman Trophy nominee. If you don't know what the Peter Gorman Award is, it's for CIS Rookie of the Year. He's not going to win it, unfortunately, because there's a kid named Hugo Richard that plays for the Laval Rouge et Or who's absolutely destroying the league right now. But Marcus, in my opinion, should be a nominee. If he's not, there's something wrong. So Marcus Davis is the good for the UBC Thunderbirds. And I know we keep harping on it this year, but there's very few things that you can say are good about this year's squad.
Yeah, it's nice that we can find a few at least. And also he's a BC boy, which also helps out this show.
Absolutely.
Let's touch on the bad.
The bad is, and it's like we're going back to it again, it's the offense for the UBC Thunderbirds. They're the second worst offense in all of the Canada West. They are 20th out of 27 for red zone completion in the CIS. Just 50% for that right now. That's also the worst in the Canada West. And there's really no excuse for the Thunderbirds to be lacking in offense. I mean, we can look at the offensive line. There's a lot of young kids that are filling in big roles right now. But when you've got weapons like Marcus Davis, when you've got Terrell Davis, when you've got Brandon Deschamps, when you've got Alex Morrison, and you've got an improving Carson Williams, and most of all, you've got Sean Olsen, who is, you know, an offensive coach. I mean, he does the offensive coordinating for the team as well. He was a quarterback in his CIS days. You'd think that offense would be the key to the Thunderbirds, but this year struggling mightily, so that's the bad for the T-Birds at the midway point.
Let's get to the ugly.
All right, so the ugly for the Thunderbirds this year, and this one's tough because, you know, the Thunderbirds have always kind of struggled when it comes to attendance. Their first game of the season, unfortunately, had to be against Calgary at home. They had it as their homecoming. They had their best crowd in over a decade come out to that game. By halftime, the game, not even, by the end of the first quarter, Let's be honest, the game was over. But the fans, they did stick around a bit. However, we did see in the second home game of the season for the T-Birds, they had their worst crowd in 3 years. So that's got to be the ugly for the Thunderbirds this year. You know, there's no excuse when you are in a market like Vancouver. I mean, I know we've got professional teams here, whether it be the hockey team, whether it be the BC Lions or the CFL. But, I mean, they got to drive something to get these fans out there. And when you have a populace like you have up at UBC, you have really no excuse to not get the fans to come out and support this team. So that's the ugly with the Thunderbirds right now, and I'd like to see that improve moving forward. Huge game coming up this week against Regina. This could be make it or break it for the playoffs for the Thunderbirds. They've got Calgary after that on the road, and then they've got to come back home and face against Saskatchewan. This Regina game is a must-win, so if they don't win this, that's also going to be ugly for them because that means no playoffs for the Thunderbirds this year. In a season that we really thought they might contend for the Canada West, maybe not title, but give the Dinos a bit of a run, and right now they're way behind.
And to extend your earlier point about the marketing or lack thereof for UBC, yes, this is a major market. Yes, there are major teams here, BC Lions, Whitecaps, Vancouver Canucks, but it's all right in a small portion of downtown. Then you have Point Grey, which is way out there, and you've got all the real estate in the world to get some marketing, to get some promotion going for your games, and there's nothing.
There isn't, and Vancouver is a tough city for that. We know that. I mean, the Vancouver Canucks right now, look what they're doing. They had to try and drive their fan base back after just one bad season. So this is one of those towns. They don't like losing products in this town. I think the biggest challenge for the Thunderbirds is the fact that they're at a Point Grey. You make it sound like it could be a positive and that they could maybe get those people that are out there that might not necessarily want to come downtown. In my opinion, the best thing for the Thunderbirds would be to get out of Point Grey and to possibly get downtown. I'm not saying go to BC Place because I don't think BC Place would be the right stadium for them as well. You see that in Calgary, for instance. McMahon's just too big for the Dinos fan base. And it looks bad when you have that many.
Switch the camera angles, though, and you'll see a couple people.
Yeah, exactly. But, I mean, it looks bad when you have a, 20,000 plus stadium and you're only getting, 3,000, 4,000 people. Which, although is not a bad. I mean, 3,000, 4,000 people is what you kind of want. So, long story short, for the Thunderbirds, I think they would benefit if they could get themselves downtown. That's just not going to happen. So maybe you're right. Maybe just drive that model out where you are and try to get more people. And to be honest, when you go up to UBC, how much do you see in terms of marketing for the football team? Little, if not none, right? So I think that's a challenge for the Thunderbirds. And again, though, a winning product, though, would probably get those fans from that first game back out.
All right, mid-season report card.
Right now, to be honest with you, I want to say C-. I want to say C-. However, they could still make the playoffs, right? I mean, like I said, that road game against Calgary is going to be tough. And let's be honest with you, if you were a betting man, and I know you are, I
owe a couple bucks.
You would take the Dinos to win that game. But really, I mean, the Regina game is going to be the one this week, and then of course having to play Saskatchewan at home. So I'll give them a C, but C-, and well, it'd be an F if they don't make the playoffs, because especially with that recruiting class this year.
Hey, a C to C-, that's not a bad average. You could one day become host of Touchdown BC if you pull that off.
You are living proof of that.
There you go. There you go. And finally, Andrew's picks.
All right, so my picks. We're going to go this week with a couple of kids who are out of the University of Guelph. One of them, his name is Michael Carney. He's a defensive back for the Griffins, and he's also a product of St. Thomas More. Had an interception this weekend in a win over Carleton, had 4 tackles. Although Mike was a quarterback when he played for the Knights, and he did get a pass this week as well, so he's 1 for 1 getting a pass, and it was a 13-yard reception. So I'm not 100% sure what the Griffins plan on doing, although Jazz Lindsay, who's the quarterback at Guelph, is going to be moving along, so maybe Michael will be the guy to come in there and play. The other kid that I'm talking about is Mason Swift. Now, Mason Swift is out of Mount Douglas. He's a product of the Rams. He got his first CIS touchdown this week. Last year, he struggled a bit with the Griffins to get playing time, but mostly because he had an injury. Mason was quite a big recruit for the Griffins, so he is now on the board, and hopefully we'll see more of Mason moving forward. Of course, their biggest running back is Rob Farquharson with the Griffins. He'll be moving on as well, so hopefully Mason will get some some more touches. My third guy is someone we spoke about before. Brandon Lay is his name. He's the quarterback for the Mount Allison Mounties. With the win, they are improved to 6-0 in the AUS. They're absolutely stomping the AUS this year. They've guaranteed themselves a second straight Loney Bowl final. So props to Brandon Lay and props to the Mount Allison Mounties for achieving what they've achieved this year, because they look like they're going to go 8-0 this year.
His name's Andrew Wadden. He's our UBC insider. What we haven't had the pleasure of getting the chance to do so far on this show this season is give you some AA high school highlights. That trend stops right now, though. Let's head out to Chilliwack for an epic battle between the Mission Roadrunners and the GW Graham Grizzlies in this week's BC High School Football Game of the Week.
Yes, it's the AA variety, and for this matchup, we head out to the Burbs. Quarterback Jesse Walker decides to call his own digits early. He takes this one in from 22 yards out, and just like that, it's 13-0 Roadrunners awaiting the extra. Walker then handles a bit of a high snap, hands it off to Riley DeMarco, who makes it work. He grabs a major while the cameraman was grabbing a bagel. A 19-yard scamper, and it's 21 blank Mission. Walker then with the fake handoff to DeMarco calls his own number once again. Another touchdown for Mission, and they're running away with this one. It's his second major of the night. GW does get on the board late in the fourth. It's Brad Westad squeaking it in. Mission defeats the GW Graham Grizzlies 26-6. And now here are the rest of your AA scores. And here is your AAA scoreboard. Now let's take a look at your AAA standings, starting with the Eastern Conference. And finally, a look at your AAA standings in the West.
All right, we welcome in our BC High School Football insider, as always, from Football BC, Dino Jeremiah. Dino, thanks for joining me.
Always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Now, this week we had a AA game in the High School Game of the Week. First week we've had that so far. GW Graham, Mission Roadrunners, 26-6, the final for Mission. Just kind of get your thoughts on the game here.
Mission is a solid program. They seem to be carrying on from where they left off with Kevin Watron as their head coach. This year, new head coach taking over. And similar results, top ranked in the province. They've been a strong program in AA for the last 4 or 5 years. So it's good to see them doing well. Jesse Walker, an outstanding talent at Mission. So I see them going far. But kudos to GW. They have a good program. They're young in their first few years as a program. So I expect to hear great things from them in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And now a great game that you were at, battle of a couple juggernauts over the past weekend. STM, Terry Fox, what were your impressions?
Terry Fox slowly took over the game. They're physical, they've got depth, and just sort of wore St. Thomas More down, and they beat him handily and going away. So they could have put up more, I think, as the game went on. They just wore them down. So I walked away from there, unfortunately not away, but it was at the same park. And I'm thinking, you know, I don't know if there's a team that could match their physicality, and then watch South Delta completely annihilate. Little sore spot, but my alma mater, Notre Dame, and I thought, wow, South Delta's got a physical team too. So I expect that South Delta, after beating College, a very convincing win against Notre Dame, and I expect them to be one of those teams that maybe can match physical for physical with Terry Fox.
I didn't know you were a juggler. I had no idea.
Yeah, Notre Dame juggler.
Very nice. Oh, very impressive.
A couple years ago.
Yeah, just a few years ago. Yeah. Now, as we always like to do, let's check out what's going on with Football BC.
Really, a lot of questions this week with regards to recruiting. The Thanksgiving weekend is a time where CIS West takes a break. So there's a lot of schools out and about, a lot of recruiting ramping up. So a lot of questions coming through the door. Coach Doby was out here. So just a constant to let the players know that they are being watched. But I think the biggest thing that we can send to the players is make sure you play for the passion of the game and not to be recruited. So many players say, oh, well, so-and-so is coming, you know, I want to show them. Play to win. That's the most important thing, so the coaches can see your passion and love for the game. And that's the most important thing. And I'm actually going to do a recruiting presentation out at the Life Ready facility in October 23rd. So feel free to come by and check it out.
Sounds awesome.
Yeah.
He's the 2009 Notre Dame valedictorian, and he is our BC High School football insider every week, Dino Jeremia. Much like the Canada West, we had a little break in the action in the BCFC. However, the admin staff was working overtime, sorting out their all-star selections. So with a look at who stands out and the playoffs coming up this weekend, we meet up once again with our insider, Alex Kerrigan. Wait a second, though. Before we meet up with Alex, let's once again use the magic of television.
Here's a final look at your BCFC standings. Heading into the first week of the postseason, Okanagan in first place, followed by the Langley Rams, Kamloops Broncos, Vancouver Island Raiders, West Shore Rebels, and the Valley Huskers.
All right, as promised, we welcome in our BCFC insider, once again, Alex Kerrigan. While there wasn't much going on the field, there was a lot going on off the field. They named the All-Star team this past weekend. Who stands out and who made the squad?
That's right. Thanksgiving Monday, they decided to announce the All-Star team, and there are a lot of standouts. There are a couple obvious guys as well. Obviously, Marshall Cook. He was 95 yards away from setting the new receiving record in the BCFC this year. That one's a no-brainer. I'm really happy about the other guy that they picked at wide receiver, my boy Dan English out of the Langley Rams. He finished with numbers that were pretty comparable to Marshall Cook, but he had 30 less catches, so his average was just through the roof. There were some other guys who made it. Robbie Yochum from the Okanagan Sun. I thought he was going to make it as a kick returner. They put him on as a defensive back. He's a very good defensive back, but he has 6 special teams touchdowns this year. Probably going to beat out John Beckerleg for this returner announcement. They actually haven't named their returner yet. There's also a couple of other guys from the Okanagan Sun. Alex Bradley, of course, another no-brainer. He led the league in rushing this year. But I think a big reason for that is Michael Vecchio. Michael Vecchio, check this out. He was BCFC Player of the Week in Week 3. He's an offensive lineman. They usually don't even get Offensive Player of the Week, and they picked him as Player of the Week. That's a huge, huge thing for an offensive lineman. So those are a couple of the standouts for the BCFC All-Star team for me.
He might get his own movie with Sandra Bullock. You never know.
Yeah, you never know.
To a lineman too. So, let's head over to the playoffs now. A few good matchups on tap. We're going to start things out with Langley and Kamloops.
Oh, so much to talk about with those. First things first, it's going to be October the 18th at 4 p.m. at McLeod Athletic Park Stadium. Langley is the favorite. Of course, they're the home team. I think they can really do a lot with this game. Jordan McCarty is going to be the starting quarterback for them. He's still filling in for Dylan Tucker, who went down in Week 6. McCarty's looked good. He has a really good deep ball. He rolls out of the pocket nicely. All he really has to do to win this game, though, is hand the ball off to Nathan Lund and find his all-star receivers like Dan English, like we just talked about, Torrey Corrado, the Toronto Argonauts draft pick, and Malcolm Williams. Special teams is going to be an area of concern. You know, John Beckerleg, like we talked about, he started on a fever pitch. He set the new Rams return record for touchdowns in Week 4. Since Week 4, he's kind of slowed down. The pace has been a lot slower for him. The smarter teams just aren't kicking to him. And also Steve Thomas, the punter for the Rams, he's outkicked his coverage all year, and he can't do that against Kamloops. Now, Kamloops can still win this game. I think that the fact that they've made it to the playoffs, they're third in the league, they've got 6 wins. It's most wins and highest place for Kamloops this year. They can almost call that a little victory. And I know some of them are watching Touchdown BC right now saying, hey, we can win this game. We're offended at that. And they can. If they run the ball, Jacob Paul-Marin has a very high average. He only has 1 touchdown this year, but he needs to find the end zone. There needs to be a bit of balance. And of course, the Kamloops Broncos have Derek Yatchison and Devin Sinka. Everyone knows who Yatchison is now. He plays for the practice roster. He's on the practice roster for the BC Lions, pardon me. He's going to get a lot of double teams. He's going to get a lot of the spotlight. Devin Sinka is going to be able to take advantage of that. Very quietly, he had over 600 yards, about a 20-yard average, and 6 touchdowns this year. The other matchup, oh boy. Okanagan Sun and the Vancouver Island Raiders. They played each other 3 times this year. Okanagan has handled them pretty well, but Vancouver Island can still win. You know, they have Liam O'Brien and they have Marshall Cook. If Liam O'Brien explodes for a big game and they can find Marshall Cook, they'll be able to do it. But Here's the key matchup that I'm looking at. In those 3 games, Vancouver Island has not rushed for 100 yards once. They need to be able to check down to Nathan Berg and Michael Rashot. They need to be able to find some way to chew up yards, draws, misdirections, screen passes, any way to keep that Okanagan Sun defense honest, and then run the play action to Marshall Cook, get a couple deep yards that way. If Okanagan runs the ball, they're going to win. It's simple as that. They are a tremendous running team. We've talked about Alex Bradley. They also have Dylan Fortune, Michael Vecchio. Cam Bador also is going to be coming back. He has had he's set out a couple of games. He's had some concussion-like symptoms, and all he really has to do for this one is hand the ball off.
Yep.
I am so excited. I was talking about it last week.
The man is fired up.
Can't wait. Yeah.
Fired up. Let's get some predictions for this weekend.
Well, I think it's probably going to be Langley and Okanagan. The home teams are going to prevail, but that doesn't mean that the underdogs aren't going to put up a good fight. But for Langley and Kamloops, I'm calling it 38-28 for the Langley Rams.
Good game, okay.
And for the Okanagan Sun and VI Raiders, how about 35-21? Yeah, 35-21. I think that Okanagan's had a lot of success against VI this year. It's just going to keep going.
I like it. Put it down in Vegas. His name is Alex Kerrigan. He's our BCFC insider. This past weekend, just before the BC Lions destroyed the Ottawa Red Blacks, there was the induction of the 2014 class in the BC Football Hall of Fame. Let's head out now to BC Place Stadium to find out who's in the new class.
Over 200 gathered to watch the induction of the newest class to the BC Football Hall of Fame right before the Lions-Red Blacks game. As mentioned, a total of 6 athletes, 3 builders, a pioneer, 2 special award recipients, 2 media winners, and 2 teams were inducted into the hall. Here are those inductees.
All right, that does it for this week's episode of Touchdown BC. Thanks a ton for joining us. Remember to keep it clean on and off the field. You do the booze, you lose, and drugs are for losers. I'm Ryan Sullivan, and I'll see you next time.